Well, good evening, everyone. We welcome you to the Monday, June the 29th edition of Track Announcer's Notebook. Pat Gonsalves here once again, along with my co-host and producer, Stuart Nodell. And it's our pleasure to have two of the young lions, two of the future superstars of Canadian road racing with us this evening. It's going to be a all Leclair hour with Jake and Ben Leclair, who will be joining us shortly. And how tonight's show came about, last week we had Ben Young along with Trevor Daly and Kenny Reedman on the show talking about superbike racing and the state of the CSBK series. And one of our folks who was tuning in asked the question, beyond the top superbike riders right now, like Trevor and Ben, who do they see as the next wave of great Canadian riders? And Ben Young spoke up right away and said the Leclair brothers. I think Jake and Ben are two of the rising stars in Canadian road racing. And sure enough, I reached out to Jake and Ben's parents, who I've known for many, many years, to show you how long I've been announcing motorcycle road races. Steve Leclair used to do some road racing, and I was kidding him before we came on that Steve was never nearly as quick as Ben and Jake, but he was a fine racer in his own right, and obviously he's passed along some of those genes to his two sons. So before we get to Jake and Ben, I want to check in with Stuart Nodell. A little bit of housekeeping, and Stuart's going to be sharing his screen a little bit later on with some great photos of the number 811 and the number 54 machine. Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Just want to thank everybody again for joining us this evening as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to go down to the bottom of your screen in the Q&A section. Type in any questions or comments you have throughout the evening, and when there's a break in the action with Pat talking to both Jake and Ben, we'll gladly answer any questions you guys might have. So we want you guys to be involved, so feel free to join in.
Thanks, Stuart. And again, feel free to send Stuart a note if there's a racer or a rider that you'd like to see on a future edition of Track Announcer's Notebook. We'll try to make the arrangements to have them on. I can tell you that next week we're going to have Dan Kruger as we check back in with Dan Kruger, sort of the state of his racing and what's happening worldwide. As we said, we'll have Jeff Williams. We've got Tony Sharpless coming up shortly about her mini superbike school and series that she's been working on. So lots going on. But without further ado, let's bring on 19-year-old Jake Leclair, who'll be a pro rider in 2020, and amateur sport bike racer Ben Leclair. Jake and Ben, welcome to Track Announcer's Notebook. Good to have you on.
Pat, thanks for having us. Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
We understand that you guys have been out, at least you, Ben, you've been racing, going back to your roots. This past Sunday, you're at Walton running your Yamaha YZ125. And Jake, Steve Waycamp at Trail Tours has hired you to be one of the instructors and staff at Trail Tours that is open, running under the COVID-19 procedures and protocols. Jake, let's start with you. What's it been like running the Trail Tours courses there since you opened about a month ago?
It's been pretty good, Pat. Pretty much everything's mostly the same. It's just a little more sanitizing, I'd say, just keeping the distance. Just try not to get too close, and just making sure everything's nice and clean at the end of the day. But other than that, it's pretty much just the same as always, just good fun, teaching people how to ride. And
how much riding are you able to get in there on the dirt bike? And what have you been riding?
We've just been on 250Fs is mostly just what I've been taking, just nothing crazy. It can be anything from just like, it's mostly just like 7 hours of riding every day. Could be anything from just standing in a field teaching people to riding from 10 to 3 every day, like pretty fast in the single track. Yeah, it just all depends on who comes and their rider level.
Ben, you've been working with Rob Egan, sort of taking over Jake's gig. But a couple of weeks ago, I think you went to Gopher Dunes, pulled out the Yamaha YZ125, and it looked like you hadn't missed a beat, although it's been, what, 2 or 3 years since you've really raced motocross, and that was on an 85cc bike. How quickly did it all come back on the motocross track?
I mean, it was probably Saturday practice. It just kind of just all felt good. I mean, just riding just at my own pace, not riding too fast, not riding too slow. I mean, just at my own pace, just going one foot in front of the other, getting back into it. But I mean, as soon as that first gate drop, it felt right again. And yeah, I mean, I was just having fun.
Now, this past weekend, in fact, yesterday, you were at Walton doing a bunch of racing. There's 6 motos. How tough was that, and what kind of riding shape are you in for motocross?
I surprised myself. I mean, I thought I was definitely going to be a little tired at the end of the day, but I actually held on. Like the last moto at the end, I was still strong. Like I still had a lot into me. So, I mean, I did surprise myself. I didn't think I'd have that much energy at the end. So, yeah, I'm happy to be in a good.
Have either of you had a chance to get on your Yamaha equipment that you'll race in the CSBK National Series that we hope will start soon? As announced on Track Announcer's Notebook last Monday night, the opening race at Atlantic Motorsport Park that was scheduled for July 31st, August 1-2 weekend, that is canceled, officially canceled. I checked in with Colin Fraser today. They are trying to put together a series that would include a round at Calabogie. The Canadian Tire Motorsport Park August weekend is still on the schedule, and then hopefully the finale on the September 18, 19, 20 weekend at Shannonville. But like so many series, everything is still TBA, to be confirmed. So look for some announcements coming out in the coming days and weeks from CSBK as to the status of the series. I know everybody's working hard to make something happen. Encouraging news, I know SOAR has run a couple of events at Grand Bend, and also this past weekend, Trevor Daly, who was on Track Announcer's Notebook last Monday night, Trevor went there on the weekend. He's been working with the Suzuki factory team, and he tells me there was a great crowd out for the races. They were allowed to have some spectators. The racing was superb, and you know, he is hopeful that there'll be at least a few races in CSBK this year. So Jake and Ben, I'll let each of you answer this question. How tough has it been not starting as scheduled at the end of May, when I'm sure you were thinking about the 2020 season all winter long until COVID-19 hit in March?
Yeah, it's definitely been a little tough. Even though we do start kind of late in the year compared to motocross, it still sucks not to be racing. Like right now, we've only been out one time at Shannonville there a couple weeks ago, just on our old bikes, just to kind of just get back in the groove of things. But since then, we haven't really done any much road racing. It's just been more dirt bikes at the house, really.
Okay, and Ben, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, the motocross thing's kind of filling my competitiveness for sure. I mean, there's been a lot of good racing going on these last 2 weekends. So, I mean, yeah, to not be road racing does suck and everything, but I'm happy to be on the dirt bike and stuff too.
Okay, we want to get into the 2019 season and both of your seasons, but let's go to Stuart Nodell. I think, Stuart, we may have a question or two or comments.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A here. And one actually, first is a comment. Jim Brown is just mentioning that they have concerns about doing Daytona due to the COVID situation down there. It's obviously rapidly grown, so they're not too confident whether or not they'll even be an event, or even more so if they feel themselves comfortable in going down. And then the other question we have, it's from an anonymous attendee, and they just want to ask Ben, who does he see as a future champion?
Ben or Jake, is that the question? Is that an
It
either
was, it
or?
was for Ben. The question was for Ben. And then they asked, why is it Adolfo Silva? So I think that question may have been planted, but we'll let Ben answer that.
Yeah. What exactly is the question? Who do I think could be a champion in the lightweight class? Is that what he's asking?
It just said future champion, so I would assume so.
Yeah, I seen a couple guys. I mean, it could be a good another battle for sure. I mean, I don't have a certain. I haven't really seen much. I haven't been around the track yet this year a lot, so I don't really have an answer for that one.
Okay, so let's go back to last year. Jake, we're going to start with you. Winning the CSBK Amateur Lightweight Sport Bike Championship. That wrapped up at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. At that very last race, you had already taken the #1 plate. But it was a very special afternoon where not only did you win that last round, you didn't need to, you'd already wrapped up the title, but Ben, who ended the season 5th in the championship, was on the podium. And I know on the PA, Frank Wood and I were talking about, we couldn't remember another time when at a national road race, two brothers were on the same podium. How special was that, having wrapped up the Amateur Sport Bike Championship, to have your younger brother Ben right there on the podium as well?
Yeah, Pat, it was definitely something to remember. Just from crashing out Saturday to being able to run the #1 on Sunday, and then pretty much going from 4th to 1st in the last lap, and then to get back to the pits to find out Ben got 3rd. It was definitely something pretty cool to both be up on the podium, final race of the year, getting the Blue Crew Award and the championship #1 plate. It was all definitely something pretty special, and definitely going to be looking back on that for a few years.
And Ben, you had improved your riding just looking at the results from 2018 to where you finally finished on the podium. How did you improve throughout that season where you weren't, running top 5 early? You slowly improved your skill. Was it just a matter of track time and building your confidence where Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, multi-rider battle, positions being swapped all over the racetrack, and you're on the podium there with your brother who's got that #1 plate?
Yeah, I think for me it was more about just the seat time leading up, just going to every round and just improving more here and there. And then Shuby came around, and I think I learned a lot at Shuby, just the track itself. And I feel like you learn a lot at Shuby when you go there on a new bike and everything like that. And the Mossport, the first race, I was kind of there, but I wasn't in that lead group. I was kind of in the second group. So going into the Sunday, I was like, if I could stay in that lead group, then I could hopefully put it on the podium, and I ended up doing it. So yeah, felt good.
Before 2018, we're talking about you and Jake. Did you guys ever discuss any strategy, trying to help each other in the draft or size up the competition? What kind of team play was going on between the two of you, if any?
The start of the season, didn't really know what to expect. I just kind of went out and did my own thing for the first few rounds, just because, new bike, new year, new competitors. And it was just Ben's first year racing, my second. So he was just figuring out the bike, I guess, at each round. It wasn't until about Mossport when we realized, because Mossport from the Kawasaki Ninja Cup in 2017, realized how important the draft was. It wasn't until then that we discussed qualifying and how much the draft will help with qualifying. So we kind of just worked on it a bit there, but pretty much the whole year was just kind of just tips here and there to Ben, and just kind of running our own races and riding our own practices.
And so, Ben, take us through that last lap in 2018 when you got the podium there to join your brother. As I recall, I'm not sure if there were 6, 7, 8. They might have been 8 early and it came down. How were you able to get through to grab that 3rd place spot? Take us through that final lap and your charge to the podium.
Yeah, well, coming onto that back straightaway, that final lap, I was sitting like at the very back of that group. So I just kind of thought if I was sitting at the back, I could slingshot myself up there. And then I was kind of drafting everyone. Then I seen Jake kind of pull out, so I kind of got in his draft a little bit. And then he went around Alex on the outside, and I kind of went on the inside, and then ran him through 8 a little bit, like tight, and then was able to push him out a little bit into 9. So yeah, it was a pretty intense last lap for sure.
Okay. We wrap up 2018. Jake moves from lightweight sport bike. He picks up the Yamaha Blue Crew Award, has a R6 for 2019. You fifth in 2018. You're now one of the preseason favorites, if you will, to win that championship. And you're able to do it, but it wasn't easy. Take us through your 2019 season and how you're able to pull it off. There were so many talented riders in that series.
Yeah, I mean, I knew from round one, the way round one was raced by everybody, and racing close with that Avery Hart. I mean, I knew I just had to be consistent and just finish every race at a good spot and just collect points here, there, and just keep it consistent. No mistakes, no crashes, nothing like that.
Of the other riders who are in the hunt for the championship, who would you size up as your toughest competitor? Was it Keegan Godet? Was it Avery Hart? Was it Bertiom? Who was the guy that I don't want to use the word feared, but was your stiffest competition on your way to that championship?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I feared anyone. I mean, I was definitely close with Avery a couple times, but he was pretty inconsistent throughout the season. So, I mean, after St. Eustache and his crash at Bogey and his bad luck at St. Eustache, I mean, I knew I just had to be consistent and just put it on the box at every round from then and just collect points on them and stuff like that. So I'd say Avery Hart was probably the challenge for sure. He was pretty quick.
Yeah, and just looking at your record from last year, 10 of 12 podiums. That's pretty consistent. I think other than that, you had a couple of fourth place finishes, but a great ride to the championship. Now, Jake, how much of a move up was it going from amateur lightweight sport bike? Obviously, you're on an R6 Yamaha, so way more horsepower. And you came up just one position short, finishing runner-up in that championship. You take us through your 2019 season, the high points and maybe the odd low point in the season.
Yeah, Pat. So pretty much before the first national round at Shannonville, I had a race regional weekend on the 600, and that was pretty much the only track time I had on it before the first national. So to pretty much come out of the first race of the season fourth, because there was a red flag, I wasn't happy, but I wasn't disappointed just because it was my first kind of just look at the bike still. And then we went into Grand Bend, and just to have pretty much a perfect weekend, win that race, that was definitely a big confidence booster. And then Shuby and St. Eustache, they were okay. I like Shuby on the 600 a lot. A lot of people were telling me I wasn't going to like it, this and that, but it was honestly probably one of the more fun tracks just for the elevation and the speed. And then Mosport kind of came around, and by that time I was given the news that I was headed to Italy for the VR46 Master Camp. So I was just wanted to finish out the season healthy and strong. So to come away from there with 2 podiums and sadly finished second in the championship my first year on a 600. Wasn't happy, but then again, I wasn't mad about anything. Just still learning every time I was out on the track. That's all I could really ask for.
Well, that was an interesting weekend because Jared Walker on the Kawasaki, he sort of played the role of spoiler. He won both of those races. And do you think the championship picture would have been maybe obviously different if you were able to stand on the top of the box on both Saturday and Sunday?
It would have been nice, but then again, my first time at Mosport on a 600, and wasn't a Lard's first time. I'm pretty sure he was there the year before, so
Yep.
both of them had good amount of track time on the 600. So then again, first weekend at Mosport on a 600, I was definitely disappointed, but it is what it is. So just move on, look at where I was weak, and try to make those weak points strong.
Right. So now you get the opportunity. Graham Jones with Yamaha Motor Canada. And I think your mom sent me a text to say, hey, guess what? Jake's going to the Valentino Rossi camp. I'm not sure if any other Canadian riders have ever had that opportunity. Tell us about what that experience was like going there, and you're with a group of other very talented young riders from all over the world.
Yeah, it was something. Just being with Graham for a week, it was pretty nice just to kind of get to know him, make our relationship a bit stronger. And when we first got there, it was kind of calm and all that. And then we started to get into things, get all our gear, things like that. And then once we started riding, then it was kind of like it got really like real, because I was just kind of just like there, didn't really think much of it. But then once we started riding, it kind of hit me that, I'm in Italy at Rossi's house, riding. And yeah, it was a good experience overall. My favorite part was definitely the flat track. That was just hands down the most fun thing I could probably do. Like, I'd do it again in a heartbeat for sure.
Had you ever flat tracked before? I know you'd raced motocross for years. And what did you learn from the flat track coaching in terms of maybe a few tricks as to how to handle the road race machine?
Yeah, I never flat tracked before. We just had XR100s just on the ice on our pond, which it's similar in a sense, just not as you just have a lot more traction on the ice. So when I got there, I kind of knew, everything, slide it in, power out, sliding it out. So I was definitely better off than some of the other guys I was with there, the other riders. But we pretty much just went over everything. Just throttle control is the biggest thing. Like, that just makes the world of difference, just being smooth on that throttle.
All of the riders who were there, was there an evaluation at the end of the camp? Could you compare your lap times? Because I assume in addition to flat track, you got some pavement experience as well?
Yeah, we had a few races on flat track. We had about, I think it was best 2 out of 3 or something like that. So we were doing flat track. I won that in a sense, I guess. That was pretty fun. But then we also when we went to Misano, we did just kind of like lap times, like qualifying. And man, like, they are just, that's all they ride. Like, over in Europe there, where what they were riding in is like 250s, 300s, 150s, 125s. So they were pretty quick on those R3s, because I hadn't ridden one in a year. So it was just getting used to braking so deep and just hammering the throttle at the apex. It took me a bit to get used to. And then at the end of it all, I was only about half a second off their time. So it was good overall on different tires than we normally ride here. But that track is something else compared to anything we have here. It is just surreal.
So let's look ahead to 2020. Hopefully the season is going to start in the coming weeks. It's going to be an abbreviated schedule any way you look at it, Jake. What are your goals for pro sport bike?
I'll just do the best I can. There's no real expectations, I'd say, this year. No pressure either. Just go have fun. It would be nice to try and win Rookie of the Year. So just consistency, especially with only a few rounds, if that. So consistency and just riding my own race every race and having fun. That's about it.
Ben, pretty special. You follow in your brother's footsteps, winning the amateur lightweight sport bike championship. You now move up to amateur sport bike. Has Jake given you any kind of advice other than finish the season one position higher than I did last year?
Yeah, he's giving me a lot of valuable advice for sure. I mean, that test day helped me out a little bit, just pointing me in the right direction on some things. And Yeah, it's definitely helped me out a little bit. I mean, I haven't had a lot of time on that bike yet, so I mean, hopefully the next time I get out, I can put down some better laps.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit earlier about, maybe some other races in Ontario at either possibly SOAR or the Super Series at Shannonville. Any thoughts, depending on what happens in the United States and the border opening, to maybe look at doing some races in the United States this year?
Yeah, we were a few years ago in 2018 actually, I went down and did the New Jersey round for Moto America, and that was good. That was definitely a lot of fun. Just kind of sucked our bike wasn't as fast as theirs, but it rained all weekend, so it really helped my results for sure. But yeah, if we were to go do that, we'd probably both be on our threes, just looking at cost wise things. So it's definitely not concrete set in stone, but it's possible. Not likely though. But we've thought about it for sure.
And Ben, what about you? What were your goals going into the 2020 season, and how have those maybe have changed a little bit as we all deal with COVID-19?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my goal was just to be consistent in every round and just keep the tires on the track and maybe put it up on the box a round or two, trying to podium. But if we get a season going, then that will still remain the goal for sure, as in amateur sport bikes. So yeah.
Okay, let's go to Stuart for a moment. Stuart, have you got any other comments, questions? Again, if you're listening in, watching in here this evening, feel free to fire a question off here to Stuart, and we'll get it to Jake and Ben. Stuart?
Yeah, Pat, just a little bit along the lines of you asking the guys about their goals and stuff, and pointing out someone had mentioned with Jake wanting to aim for the Rookie of the Year in the pro sport bike, that's a really special award just because you only get one shot at that. No matter how long you race for, that is one of those awards that you do only get one crack at it. So people look like they're in Jake's corner, going to be rooting for him, so that's great.
Okay, and Stuart, I knew earlier today that you put together a few visuals, and maybe before we go back to some further questions with Jake and Ben Leclair, you can run through those, and maybe we'll get Jake and Ben to provide some commentary. The one thing I noticed looking at various photographs is that the riding style and the way they hang off of the motorcycle is very, very similar between Jake and Ben. I don't see a huge difference in terms of how they ride and how they hang off. Ben and Jake, we'll let Stuart slowly work through our visuals here, some of these courtesy of Don Empey, and talk a little bit about your riding style, and maybe if you recall exactly where this race is. That looks like Calabogie on the right.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
that was that second race. I'm almost positive, where I was just trying to put in clean laps, not crash at all, because you don't want to be caught crashing at Calabogie. That's for sure.
Yeah. What is the issue at Calabogie? We see the tire walls there, but is it just a lack of runoff area, or I'm not sure which track you guys ran on, because I know they do have a number of different track configurations there.
Yeah, they got two. We ran the big one, and it's just like there's no runoff, and it's just guardrails everywhere. There's no padding or anything. I mean, it's just I don't see it as a racetrack as much as I do. Like I see it as a good practice track. It's a beautiful racetrack, beautiful facility, but to race there, that's very risky. 100% very risky.
Right. Quick question here as we look at Jake here on the number 811. Jake, I think 811 was your motocross number. How did you come up with that number? And obviously you decided to carry it once you moved to road racing. What's the significance of the 811? You weren't born on August 11th, were you?
No, Pat. The story behind that's kind of funny. We never had graphics or anything like that when we first started racing on 50. So we kind of just made the numbers that were easiest to make out of duct tape, to be honest with you. And 811, as you can see, it's pretty simple to make out of duct tape. And as well as if I ever won a championship, you just take the left and right side off and you go to number one, which I did at Mossport in 2018. So it's working out so far, I'd say.
Okay, well, there's some method to your madness. Ben, what about you? What's the significance of 54?
Well, I've actually changed number 3 times. I started, my very first number was 417 because, again, it was easy to make with duct tape. And I liked the number 4 because of Ricky Carmichael. And then I changed it up to 14 because I like that number. And then I couldn't be 14 when I switched over to road racing because there was already, I think, 2 14s out there. And I didn't want to be 14X or anything like that. So the number 54 just kind of, like, it just looked good. It was one that I got to choose from. They gave me a bunch of numbers I could use, and 54 stood out to me, and I liked it. Just chose it.
Okay, let's hold on this picture here. Ben and Jake, tell us a little bit about your riding style, how you hang off the motorcycle, and has that riding style changed at all, particularly for you, Jake, in what you may have learned at the Valentino Rossi school last September?
Not really, Pat. That's just kind of the way, if you look at all MotoGP, World Superbike, none of them are sitting up on the bike. They're all kind of using their body to pick the bike up, get it off the side of the tire. Yeah, I wouldn't say it changed my riding style in Italy. If anything, it just kind of confirmed it a little more that I was going in the right direction, wasn't doing anything wrong. It's always been elbows up our whole life, so elbows up, I guess.
And Ben, you're sort of, we can just go back. Ben, describe your riding style. Very similar to Jake, but it is a little bit different. But compare that to one of your top competitors last year. I believe that's Keegan Godet. He's a lot more upright and maybe not leaned over quite as much as you are in that corner.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been trying to get your head down as far as you can and stuff like that. I did have some struggles getting my elbow out a little bit last year on the smaller bike, but this year when I moved up to the bigger bike, it created a little bit easier just to get that elbow out there a little bit more. For safety too, I mean, like when you crashing like that, you're going right onto your shoulder and it's like hard. Like that's not a very good place to crash. Or you have your elbow out, you can get your hand away easier, and like a lot of things just make sense about having your elbow out, like you can see Jake does there.
Okay, sorry. All right, so this is Jake at St. Eustache, and that knee and elbow pretty close to being on the pavement. Go ahead, Stuart. And Jake, this is, I believe that's a lard. You're in the thick of a multi-rider battle going on there, and same with you, Ben, at Grand Bend. You know, at times there were 8-10 riders in that amateur lightweight sport bike championship.
Yeah, for sure. It's always crazy at Mossport racing on little bikes. It's always a huge battle for sure because the draft, again, you could stay in that draft, you could stay in that pack. So, yeah, definitely a lot of riders that didn't have the chance to race up in that pack were up there this year for sure.
And checkered flags, victory laps. You guys did that quite a bit. Jake, go back to last year. When you look back on the season, coming up, finishing second in the championship in amateur sport bike, was there a race in the season that when you look back to say, I was at my very best at that race at that time?
I'd probably have to go with Grand Bend. There's still, when I run that race through my head, which I do quite often, like I do all the rounds, there's still so much room for improvement. I just think of, you know, little spots where I could do this, do that, just make up some time. But probably Grand Bend. That was a really good weekend. Just had a lot of fun. Felt good on the bike all weekend, and yeah, it paid off come Sunday.
And Ben, what about you? That, I believe it was the second race at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. You guys are using the old school Mosport name. You probably got it from your dad. That race on Sunday, I believe there were 8 riders in that lead pack, swapping positions in every corner. I think Tony Sharpless was one of the riders in that lead group of 8. How difficult or challenging is it when it's not just 2 or 3 riders battling for the position, but you've got 8 riders, particularly up that Andretti straightaway? What are you trying to do? Where are you trying to position yourself going off the end of that straightaway into the S's, particularly as it comes down towards the end of the race?
I mean, coming off, you definitely don't want to be in first coming onto that back straightaway because you're at a straight disadvantage right away because you're going to get drafted and you're going to get passed. So, I mean, trying to be like a couple spots back from the lead definitely helps coming onto that back straightaway because you can drag, you can use all their drafts at once to try to just slingshot yourself up there. So, I mean, that helps. But being up more on the inside of 8 and trying to just push them all wide while coming on the brakes, I mean, that definitely helps a lot. It's definitely a good spot to be.
Okay, Stuart, let's flip through the, here's a couple of podiums. You guys certainly know what it's like to be on a podium. You were there many, many times last year, and I'm sure you'll be there again in 2020 once we start racing. Stuart, just keep flipping through. Let's go back one more. Just go back to the number 1 plates. I do not recall, as we said, 2018, 2 brothers on the same podium, or as we had last year, where brothers win the same championship class back-to-back. Jake in 2018, Ben, you last year with the number 1 plates. How special was it following in your brother's footsteps in winning the CSBK Amateur Sport Bike Championship?
I mean, yeah, it felt really good. I mean, it was kind of just the goal from the get-go was just to win that championship and start moving on to the bigger bikes. And it felt really special. I mean, to be up there and winning that championship alongside the Blue Crew Award really helped us out this year with the Blue Crew Award and everything like that. But no, it was really special. I mean, winning it in the same suit on the same bike and everything like that too, that was pretty cool as well.
Excellent. Stuart, and one last one I think we've got. I know your mom and dad going back to racing motocross when you guys were, what, 5, 6 years of age you started racing schoolboy?
Yeah, around them, yeah.
Okay.
5, 6, 4, 6, something like that.
Yeah, and that's a lot of weekends at racetracks. Many years ago when I was at the Motorsport Hall of Fame where Michelle Duff was inducted, gave a wonderful speech about nobody stands at the top of the podium alone. There's always people who have helped get them there. And obviously your mom and dad have been instrumental, but who else along the way, even going back to the motocross days, have been there and have been big fans of you two guys through the motocross and on into road racing?
There's so many. It's hard to keep track, but there's mostly your parents. Without them, there would be nothing. Like literally nothing. So pretty much just them, and it's pretty much just been Oshawa Psycho, which is our shop. So no one really, other than Yamaha, has stepped up as much as Yamaha. And now this year we got Gen 7 Fuels up in Roseneath. They've helped us out a lot this year, or what would have been a year. So it's just good to know that people are still want to see the sport grow and still help out young riders.
And Ben, what about you? You had your older brother to look up to and maybe follow in his footsteps as you did last year, but what's that journey been like for you?
Oh, it's been great, Pat. I mean, just having fun along the way too, with everything, the training, everything, the lifestyle, waking up, working out, riding, everything like that. It's been fun. I mean, and then just having something to work towards too. You know, walking by your brother's room and seeing the #1 plaque in there for a year and just wanting it on your wall as well. That's definitely something to want for sure.
Okay, we're going to go to Stuart here for a moment, but we are just looking at the last couple of photos here. Jake, this is you at the VR46 Academy, and I'm sure that will always be a very special few days that you spent over in Europe. And there you are with some of the other riders. And who's the gentleman that you're working over with the Sharpie?
Oh, that's flat track champion Marco Bell. I think that's how you say his name. He was pretty much on hand the whole week, just giving us tips and tricks on how to improve our flat track skills. Super nice guy. Was definitely a pleasure to meet him, along with many other people that were there in Italy that week.
Okay, and Stuart, I think that is it. I think we may have a couple of more questions or comments, Stuart, on the question line.
Yeah, so the first question we've got is from Corey, and he wants to know from both Ben and Jake, what corner at Shuby do they find the most challenging?
Jake, you go ahead first.
I'd have to say it's hard to say. I really like Shuby. I don't have any problems with any of the tracks we have. I like, just pretty much anything. Everyone's got to ride it. But if I had to pick one corner that's a little squirrely at Shuby, probably 5 before you go on the back straight. It's just it's blind. You're kind of just powering over, just front end's light and just dropping it down. But definitely the last turn at Shuby, that one too. It's very unforgiving. It's not the nice runoff if you do go down, and it's definitely a tricky corner. But with that being said, it's also fun.
Ben, what about you? What's your favorite corner at Atlantic Motorsport Park?
I have to say my favorite corner would be probably, I really like Shuby. Shuby's a really fun track. I'd have to say probably corner 4, where you're just on the brakes so long. I mean, trailing it in there, and then just getting on the gas and going up to 5. 4 is a really good one for sure. Yep. And then the most challenging corner at Shuby for me would probably be corner 1, because it took me a little bit to figure it out, just getting the right line through there around all the bumps and stuff like that. But I was able to figure it out, and yeah, it's a definitely challenging corner.
Stuart, I think we've got another question or comment for Jake and Ben.
We do, for each of the guys. So if Jake can go first again. The question is about launching the bike off the start. It sounds like a lot of people are envious of the guy's ability to launch the bikes. So we just want to know if there's any secrets that they have to share.
Yeah, there's definitely some secrets. I'm gonna keep those secret, but mostly just starting a dirt bike for every weekend for 10 years of my life. It definitely gave me a lot of confidence. But yeah, there is some tips and tricks to doing that for sure.
And Ben, what about you? Is it all that motocross experience coming out from behind the starting gate that's helped you be a quick starter off the line in road racing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, starting a motocross, you got to start and then you got to get over the gate. Where in road racing, you just got to start the bike. So I mean, it definitely is better than going over a gate. That's for sure. I mean, you can just focus on launching the bike and just getting off and clean, rather than going over the gate and then getting into the first corner first.
Okay, Stuart, I see Jacob Black is one of our attendees. If we can put him on audio, because he was part of a number of the battles with the Leclair brothers over the last couple of years. So Jacob, who recently joined Canadian Kawasaki Motors. Jacob, if you're there, we can't see you, but feel free to ask Jake or Ben a question. And I think Franz Walker with Liqui is also on board. We'll let them ask a couple of questions before we go to our final segment. Jacob, go ahead. I think you need to unmute him, both of those, Stuart.
Is he there?
Yep, go ahead, Jacob. Is Jacob there? Jacob, can you hear us? Go ahead.
I don't think he's there.
Okay, he's not there. What? Okay. Um, okay. So Ben and Jake, I just want to talk a little bit about your physical and mental preparation for a race weekend. What is your workout program like? I know you try to do as much riding as possible, but what about cardiovascular training, weight training? And then I know I gave you guys the book that I'm a proponent of. I hope you've read it, by Dr. Jake Belair, High Performance Thinking. How do you mentally prepare for a weekend, and how much does visualization play a role in that preparedness for a race?
It definitely pays a lot into it. Just even before you get to track, just the year before, you're running laps, figuring out just in your mind where the bumps were, where you can improve, what you can avoid, what you can do. And then pretty much when you get there at the end of the night, same thing, laying in bed, just kind of just going over the whole day, just kind of just running through what's going on. And pretty much like that for the whole weekend, and even a couple of days after, just for, if you know you're going back next year, just to kind of just fine tune everything and figure out where you need to be that time next year.
How much of that do you write down or put in any kind of a log in terms of what you did, maybe set up on the bike and all that stuff? Do you track all that stuff?
Yeah, we got a bike book, we'll call it, just a notebook. Each of us has our own. We just do what we did each weekend, and then we just look back next year, see what we can do, how the bike's feeling. And same with riding. We try to get a track map, or we just kind of just draw one on a piece of paper and just jot things down here and there, what the bike's doing, what we can do, things like that.
Ben, what about you? Same program?
Yeah, pretty much, Pat. I definitely just showing up to the track and just focusing on yourself and focusing on how you can be faster and how you can think around problems and stuff like that. Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing.
Jake, when you were growing up and maybe your dad dragged you to the odd road race while you were still motocross racing, who were the road racers at that time who were your heroes? Who did you look up to? Who did you admire as a racer?
I just have faint memories. The one thing that stuck out is just when I was super young, I just remember just green bleachers, and that was Shannonville. I didn't even know what it was called. I just, every now and then I just get that memory, and it was just packed. And just Zoke, that's the only one that really comes to mind. But I think it was 2016, we were racing at Sandalee, and I unfortunately had a little bit of a crash, and we were coming home early with some casts on, and we stopped down at Shannonville for the opening weekend, and we just saw the 300 Cup, and it was like, well, that'd kind of be something cool to try. So I think I want to say that was 2016. So that was last year on 85s and super minis. So we got one of those 300s, kind of just took it out. First time I ever rode it was getting my race license, and then pretty much just went from there. But yeah, definitely Zoke is definitely one of the ones who just sticks out from years ago.
Well, he certainly had an amazing career, 13 Canadian Superbike championships. Ben, what about you? You're a couple of years younger than Jake. Who were the road racers that you admired as you looked ahead to move out of motocross and into road racing?
Yeah, Pat. I mean, motocross for sure. It was definitely like Colin Fasciotti, those guys up there, Tyler Medagula, watching them when I was on like 50s and 60s at the motocross track. But the road racing, I don't really remember much. I mean, I think I went to a couple when I was really young, and then that one in 2016, I was there as well. But yeah, I didn't really look up to anyone in the road racing division. It was just more the motocross. I mean, looking up to the top 450 guys, 250 guys at the time.
Okay, I think we've worked out our technical difficulties. We've got Jacob Black aboard. Jacob, what was it like racing against these Leclair brothers?
Frustrating, immensely frustrating. you go on a bike and you think you're hot, and then you go out on the track with guys with this level of talent, and you realise that there's a fairly large gap between you and them, and that can be difficult to understand. So, but I'm curious because I know that Ben and Jake have given a lot of support in the paddock to people that are coming up and people that they've raced with and people that they've beaten quite handily. So I'm wondering who they think, you know, their pick is for Little Bike Champion next year or this year.
Ben, you're probably closest to that series. Any of the guys you raced against, are they continuing on in that series? Who's the next Ben Leclair in that series?
Yeah, I don't really know, Pat. I know there's a couple guys that I know that are moving up. The Mac wheel on that Ninja 400, he looks pretty hot right now for sure. But yeah, that's really all I know. Like, I don't know many people unless Jacob's continuing. Then I got that championship on him for sure. But yeah, I don't really know many people, but that I know that Mac wheel is looking good. I saw him last weekend. He looks good, and yeah, he definitely has a shot at it for sure.
Jake, any thoughts as to maybe some young rider you've seen that might be the next sport bike lightweight champion?
Yeah, pretty much just everyone who's running the series. I'd say everyone's got a shot at it this year. But like Ben said, Mac Wheel, he was at Brooklyn Cycle just a few weeks ago when I was still there. So I was talking to his dad and just, you know, what they've been doing for training. It's fairly similar to what we've been doing. So he's definitely got a good shot. But you also can't count out, you know, guys like Jacob and Adolfo and just the guys who have been doing it for quite some time since we've been doing it. So it's anyone's championship really at this point, I'd say.
Jacob, you're now with Canadian Kawasaki Motors. Kawasaki really laid the foundation for the amateur lightweight sport bike championship with that single mark. I remember being at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park a few years ago when the series debuted. It had a number of successful seasons, producing some very talented riders. What's sort of the Kawasaki lineup for 2020 in terms of riders? Obviously, Jordan Zoke looking to maybe win a 14th Superbike championship. How tough has it been on Kawasaki and really all of the OEMs having to deal with COVID? But thankfully, it looks like things are opening up. Dealers are starting to gear back up, and hopefully a racing season continuing to move ahead, particularly with CSBK.
Yeah, I think all of the OEMs are in the same boat. The economy is the economy. The struggle that we're all going through for COVID is the same for everybody. There's uncertainty. There's some big changes. The way that all of the series are going to shape out, whether it's motocross, supercross, CSBK. We're excited to see what Jordan Zoke can do. Like these guys mentioned, I'm excited to see what Mac Wheel can do. I think that, you know, there's a lot of opportunity to really push the sport forward. At the moment, there's some new ownerships at new tracks. SOAR is taking off in a really big way, so maybe that grassroots regional racing is going to really push something forward on the road racing side, and I'm excited for that. So I think that, you know, we have seen this big change. We've seen this really difficult year, but if there's one thing we know about our community, it's that we love our sport and we love our bikes, and we come back from adversity like this a lot harder.
Well, Jacob, we look forward to seeing you at a racetrack soon. I'm not sure if that is on or off a motorcycle, but hopefully that happens sooner or later. Before we wrap things up, I want to bring in Franz Walker. And Franz has joined us, had the opportunity of announcing a number of Franz's races in his heyday, but now very much involved with the motorcycle industry. Franz, how have you been keeping over the last 2 or 3 months? And you must be looking forward to getting back to a racetrack.
Well, fortunately for me, Pat, I've been able to do a couple track days at Cayuga with my ZX-10, and I have the calluses to prove it, and So I'm actually feeling pretty good. I noticed I haven't been in the gym for a few months now, so I'm pretty sore for a couple of days after riding. But I've probably done more riding this year than I've been able to do in the past, countless years. So the positive for me personally is I've been able to ride my motorcycle. But business-wise, it's just thrown everything into turmoil. We just don't know what's next. We just, we're hope our fingers crossed. We hope we're going to get some kind of season happening this year. The problem we're running into is everything's getting pushed later and later into the year, and we're starting to run into some serious conflicts now. So.
Yeah, it is a very compressed season. Franz, before we wrap up here, any final thoughts, observations, questions for Jake and Ben Leclair? Because you've seen them race throughout the last 2 to 3 years.
Well, I got to say, as having sponsored them briefly, that we were really love to see the two of them. They ride really well. They speak really well. They present themselves really well. And it's important to, beyond just being good people to be able to do the job on the racetrack. So we were super happy to sponsor them, and kind of unhappy that we weren't able to continue beyond that. But I had a question for Ben, because last year at Grand Bend, we had a little conversation about, on him being on the podium and just getting nervous and not really being confident and making sure he got all the sponsors listed and all that sort of stuff. And I just wanted to find out from him how he's progressed with that and if he feels more comfortable now.
Ben,
Yeah.
Go ahead. You did a great job tonight on Track Announcer's Notebook. I think you officially passed the audition. So like anything else, it gets easier as you do it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember Franz telling me just go over your sponsors in your head before a race or like during the week or whenever you got time just to sit there and go through them. And I did that. And I mean, Mossport, I think I nailed it, to be honest with you. I mean, I thought it was pretty good. Good speech at Mossport for sure. Thanks to Franz, he gave me some advice for sure and helped me out. Yeah, I definitely put that into play for sure.
Well, friends, glad to hear that you're getting some time on your motorcycle, but we look forward to seeing you at a racetrack soon. I'm not sure where that's going to be, but thanks for tuning in tonight, and feel free to send us your thoughts, comments, and maybe a couple of racers you'd like to see on a future edition of Track Announcer's Notebook. Have a great Canada Day.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, see you, friends.
Stuart, any final questions before we wrap it up here? Looks like we've got another 3 minutes or so. Your mic is muted, Stuart.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, it looks like we've answered all the questions. Franz did have the questions, but we allowed him to come on as a panelist, so it was great to have Franz on because he's been a big part of the racing community for a long time. Even back when I began, I remember one of the first track days I did was with Franz Walker, so that was early 1990s.
Okay, Stuart. So Jake and Ben, any final thoughts? Like how does a teenager deal?
Oh, we lost you, Pat. We can't hear you. We lost you.
All right. Okay. Are we back?
Yeah, we got you
Yep.
now,
Okay.
Pat.
Sorry. Yeah, I hit the button to keep me out of the missile silos. Any final thoughts as you look ahead? Ben, first of all, until you can start road racing, are you going to continue with the motocross?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on the weekend, we felt really solid at Walton. So I think we're gonna give a shot at the Transcan and try to win a amateur championship. Because I mean, I tried for many, many years and I just couldn't put it together. And this is like the last year because of my age and everything. So I think this is a good year to give it a shot for sure.
And when's that Transcan? Is that in August?
Yeah, I don't think it's a set date yet, but sometime in August. So yeah.
Okay. So what you're telling me, the road racing has actually improved your motocross riding?
Yeah, I think so. As a racer, not much as a rider, but definitely as a racer, just to think about things like every 10th counts here, there. I mean, getting on the gas here, getting off the gas, braking later, things like that. I've definitely switched over to motocross and helped me out a lot.
Okay, and Jake, what about you? I know you're doing lots of riding at Steve Waycamp's trail tours, but any plans to do another track day or a practice day at some track in Ontario?
Yeah, once we get the new bikes from Yamaha Canada sorted, we'll probably just get some laps down and definitely probably maybe even a few motocrosses. I didn't go to Walton on the weekend for just a few reasons, but one was my wisdom teeth. I got it out last Saturday, so they advised me not to race, so I figured I'd probably listen to that one and just kind of let them heal up. But yeah, maybe even some flat track. Supermoto unlikely. I would like to do a supermoto, but definitely a flat track would be kind of like my one to do if we didn't have a race season or a late race season.
Yeah, I know Aaron Hesmer with Flat Track Canada, they were still trying to sort out their series, as most racing organizations are right now. So we're going to go to Stuart one final time, and then we'll wrap it up. Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Just one more quick comment if the guys have time, and just want to thank them first for coming on. It's been great hearing their background, and it's interesting to hear them say motocross teaching Ben road racing, because usually you hear people transitioning the other way and getting stronger. But just in terms of being brothers, we've had a lot of great brothers over the years, Pat, that have come up through motorcycle road racing. It looks like these two guys are definitely the real deal.
Well, indeed. I think back to here in Canada, Mario and Miguel Duhamel. Of course, in the United States, we had Eric and Ben Bostrom, and of course, the Hayden brothers, Tommy, Roger Lee, and the late Nicky Hayden. So, Jake and Ben, we want to thank you for coming on board here tonight, the All Leclair Hour. We wish you all the best, Ben and Jake, with the motocross stuff until we see you back on a road racing bike, hopefully in the coming weeks. And of course, you guys were coming to us live from Oshawa Cycle Salvage, your mom and dad's business there at the east end of Oshawa. If you're looking for parts, other items, you can check out Oshawa Cycle Salvage. There you see that well-stocked shelf in behind. Ben's going to be off to Brooklyn Cycle Racing, where he's working. Jake Leclair off to Trail Tours. And we want to wish both of you a very happy Canada Day, and hope to see you soon at a racetrack.
Sounds good, Pat. Appreciate it. And Stuart, thanks for having me and my brother.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Okay, and Stuart, do we have one last interloper before we wrap it up as we go overtime with Paddy Barnes?
Yeah, we've got one last word for Mr. Barnes. We'll put him on the clock here. We'll pay the boys double time.
Okay, Pat Barnes.
I get 10 seconds, right?
Well, we'll give you a full minute. Go ahead. How you doing?
Are you guys allowed to drink beer yet? See, I raced these two little devils. But the problem was there was a weight advantage. Like, I was 200 pounds and they're 100 pounds. So their dad said that they race me again, they have to start drinking beer, but I don't think we got that cleared through the courts yet. So, but I do have an R6, boys, in Canada.
Oh.
So if some old guy runs in the back, yeah, that's not good. No. Great show. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, good to see you too, Pat.
Great.
You too.
Okay, Pat Barnes, one of the good guys of the sport, I think still planning on going to Daytona in October for the Daytona 200. Hopefully the situation in Florida rectifies itself very, very quickly and they get things under control down there. And the fall cycle scene, Race of Champions and Daytona 200 can run on that October 16, 17, 18 weekend. Pat Barnes, Darren James, and Alex Coelho are entered. We're going to catch up with Jeff Williams. I think he's put his entry on hold until the situation gets under control in Florida. So, Stuart, that's it. Again, our thanks to Jake and Ben Leclair for sharing the hour with us. That'll wrap it up here. Next Monday night, we'll be on at 8 p.m. Among our guests will be Dan Kruger with an update on his racing schedule and what's happening elsewhere around the world in terms of various road racing series. We wish you a happy Canada Day. Be well.